I am very excited to deliver this week's episode, and after my preview, you will be too. Welcome back to Writing with Authors. My name is Vincent A. Lancy. I am a four-time published author, and my latest book is right behind me, Mental Health Week, the go-to book for elementary school children to learn the basics of mental health in a fun story. And you can find that book on Amazon and in the show bio after the episode ends. A big thank you to Tom Schwab and our friends at Interview Valet for today's guest. Dr. Doug is about to give a great episode and something that relates to many people. You will learn to stop self-sabotage forever, end shame and doubt, find your wolf pack, and use meditation to put yourself on the right path. Research has shown that certain genes can manifest resilience and highly focused people who can also be impulsive and easily distracted. While these traits enabled our ancient ancestors to survive, if you have these traits today, it can create havoc in your life. You might be diagnosed with ADHD, ADD, OCD. It's time to take control and harness your gift of life. Dr. Doug is here, or Dr. Douglas Brackmann. Thank you so much for hopping on the show.
Thanks, Vincent. It is good to be here. I'm excited about your new work. Yeah, so I'm hoping to help a bunch of people.
I'm looking forward to hearing all about this book, Driven. It's a supplement to your work when I was doing my research on you. Please talk all about it.
Yeah, so it's like all good authors, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. And so, the hunter-farmer theory and explanation for ADD, ADHD has been around for about 20, 30 years. And what I have done over the last 10 is really bring the science into that and demonstrate that somewhere between 3 and 5, 8% of the population, depending on how narrowly you define this, there is a different person out there. You are probably one of them. In fact, I'm sure you are, Vincent. So it is an absolute gift. But as you can tell in most societies, anything that is different, particularly powerfully different, can get judged and pushed to the side. And we can scare people that are not like us very easily. And so, my personal story, I'm 53 years old. So I was raised in the 70s in Los Angeles, and it was not a time of ADD and ADHD diagnosis in kids. So I missed that whole curve, but I knew that I was different. And somewhere in 3rd, 4th grade, they started to recognize these differences and, how I couldn't pay attention and, maybe he's bored. And that is something that started to steer a path very quickly to really help me learn how to manage this without completely destroying my life. And so go back to the beginning. By 17, I had become a high school dropout and was living in a car in Los Angeles. So if you don't take care of these, if you don't take care of this wiring system that some of us are gifted with, you can fall flat on your face in addiction.
Well, thank you for sharing your story and all the work that you've done to raise awareness for these topics. Did you always want to be a published author, or was this something that just evolved from your career?
And it's why I said the story at the beginning is because it gave me a framework that I had to write this story. And it was much more than just hey, I need to write a book to get famous. It is something that organized my inner world and allowed me to actually get out of me what was just this bubbling, burning thing that had been in there for 20 years. When I started writing, as writing goes, I am not a writer and I hate writing. So the process itself just about undid me to begin with. But I sought outside help and found some really good people to help me get my thoughts organized. So that was a godsend.
A great point you made right there. Reach out to others. People are happy to help. We cannot possibly be great at everything. So find out from people who are good at it to improve your weakness and turn it into a strength. judging by what you said about your dislike of the writing process, is there not going to be a book number 2?
Well, there's a journal coming out, which is technically not a book, but it's feeling a lot like a book. And yes, I have 2 new titles actually in the works. So, awesome. And it is a process, man. It is a process.
You'll have to keep me in the loop so we can bring you back on the show to update you with our great audience. Over the course of the writing process, though, whether it was something you discovered or you sought help from, what are some pieces of advice you can offer to our community of writers?
Get comfortable with a blank whiteboard. So it is, the dissertation process, which was really my first book. There's a stage in the dissertation process where you have a blank whiteboard in any writing thing, and it is this scary, terrifying, very much like doing calligraphy, a Japanese practice of calligraphy. When you're staring at the blank paper, it is infinite possibility, but the moment you make the first mark, it seems like you can never erase again. What I found was be really comfortable with starting over again and again and again. And every time I'd start over, it'd get a little bit better. And so it was and it's a process. It is not something you can sit down, in my experience, it's not something you can sit down and write chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. I wrote the end and I wrote the beginning and brain dumped all the ideas and just vomited basically all of this crap out of me. And then looked at the whiteboard and just started, hey, wait a minute, this got to go before this, and this has got to go before this. And it's really, it is a process.
As you're writing the book, the story, the magazine article, you name it, things evolve as you start thinking of new things and you're putting it around. And I can resonate, I should say, with it. It can't be rushed. My first book, Left for Dead, I had so many rewrites, and I share this often because it's our baby, it's our piece of work. We don't want to let it out into the world, and we're perfectionists at times with our own work. And now I'm just changing certain words just because I'm in my own head at this point. Eventually, I learned that you have to just let it out, let it go. And that's something that really has helped me mentally when writing the later books, especially this one. I wasn't trying to make a perfect product. I wasn't trying to beat myself up on little details that nobody else will probably notice, but you will notice because it's in your head.
And that is another thing I could say, is that good enough is not a feeling. So my book will never feel good enough, but in reality, it is good enough. And, good enough can always be made better, but you can spin on that better forever, trying to get rid of this feeling that it's not good enough. When I started to get peer reviewed and giving it out to some people that I trust to tell me the truth, that's when it became more real. And it's like, hey, you know what? This is actually pretty good. Like, nah, really, yeah, it is, but this sucks. And you're like, all right, let me start moving and tweaking and moving and tweaking. And eventually the baby's got to be born and you just got to let it go.
Another great point. Surround yourself with people who will give you the advice you need to hear, not want to hear. There might be an area where it sucks and you're blinded by your own light, which is natural. It's nothing to be wrong with it. You got to just let someone else be trusted into the process.
Yep. And honest people that really know you. And those that are really close to the topic. I had other psychologists read it, and I had people that had no clue what I was actually writing about. Believe it or not, the ones who, seemed to be reading it fresh actually gave me way better feedback than the people that, were reading for detail. So and that in and of itself is a process. I mean, you throw it out and what comes back is always surprising.
Thank you for sharing all that great piece of advice, why you became an author, all about your book, Driven. I would now like to ask you for your website, social media, ways for people to find this book.
So very simply, all things Dr. Doug is at iamdriven.com. And so it's all one word, iamdriven.com. There's an assessment, and I work, that's really been my latest work, and not quite a book, but damn near close. It's a 50 question nationally normed assessment to really get at the science behind driven. And that is the core of my next book. So I'm in the research process but you can find my book there. You get the first 5 chapters, both in Audible and in written free. And then any information about how to find me is all there.
Thank you for sharing that. Remember, iamdriven.com. He has the questions on there that's internationally normed. I have it written down here now in my notes. Thank you, Dr. Doug, for joining the show, Writing with Authors. And thank you to everyone viewing on the show. It keeps going and going as I am getting connected with incredible authors all around the world. He's in Nashville. I'm in Tampa. We are signing off and see you next week on Writing with Authors.